Okay, we are going to talk about basic sentence structure in English. In English, every sentence needs to have an independent clause. An independent clause is also sometimes called a main clause. A clause always has a subject and a verb. Those two things you need to remember. So, sentence has an independent clause, a subject and a verb. Also, every sentence in English needs to start with a capital letter and end with end punctuation. End punctuation, you have three choices. Usually is a period, but you can also have a question mark or an exclamation point. A period, a question mark, or an exclamation point. So a very simple example might be the glass broke. So we have a complete sentence here. We have a capital letter at the beginning. We have an independent clause with a subject and a verb. And we have end punctuation. It's also possible you could have the glass broke, or you could have the glass broke. All of these work. Notice the one that is not here. There is not a comma included. Commas do not end sentences. They continue sentences. Okay, so we need to know what a subject and verb mean. A subject is a noun, and when I say it's a noun, you need to realize that nouns look lots of different ways. You can have a very standard noun, the table, a student. You could also have the noun form of a verb, something like swimming, or you could have a noun clause. Any of these work. It just needs to be somehow the form of a noun. Okay, so a subject is a noun. Could also be the noun form of a verb, like, for example, swimming, the gerund, or it could be a noun clause. We'll talk about these at another time, but what you need to know is all of these are nouns. Traditionally, a subject is said to be a person, place, thing, or idea that is the focus or the topic of the sentence. So that's our subject. The verb needs to give you information about the subject. That is an action, a condition, a state of being. It needs to explain what the subject is doing or what is happening to the subject or the condition of the subject. So verbs, many different forms of verbs. It needs to agree with the subject, singular, plural, things like that. And it also needs to show the time. Here it's showing you that it's in the past. So those are what the main verbs do in English. There's one thing that often confuses people, especially if you come from a language where it's not necessary to have a subject in the sentence. If you say, "is so beautiful here," is this a good sentence in English? You should notice something is missing. We have a verb, but we do not have a subject. In English, this sentence is not good. So what are we going to do? We need to have a subject. You can use the subject it in English. This is sometimes called a dummy subject because it's not referring specifically to an item, but it is taking the position of the subject in the sentence. There is another common subject placement word. Okay, it is so beautiful here. Now, there is one exception to this rule in English that you must have a subject. That is, if you are giving a command to another person, an imperative form of the verb. Come here, sit down, please hand me your paper. In those situations, the subject is you, but we do not say you when we are using the imperative form. So that's the one exception to this rule of needing to have a subject. We say in this situation that we do have a subject, but we understand what it is and we don't need to state it. And the subject would have to be you. You can only do this with the subject you and only for imperative form. Okay. So here's what we have. Capital letter, independent clause, and punctuation. This is basic sentence structure in English.